Dear colleagues, let us resume our conference. Since we have exceeded the time allocated to our work, and as a next speaker, I'm truly honored to call him my colleague, who has an in-depth expertise in the cultural history, someone who has studied archaeology under the ground, above the ground, and under the water. Namely, I give floor to Mr. Juris Urtāns, and I truly hope that he will truly entertain us with his presentation. I'm quite nervous standing in front of you, and we are also behind our time. So I'm ready for the concluding words, but yes, let us start with my presentation. I have been invited to talk about the future challenges of archaeology in Latvia. So I thought about them and what could be those challenges, because future as such is a challenge since it works against the past and the present. Of course, we understand the past. We can classify the past, try to understand it and test it. However, it's quite different with the future. We can interpret and classify the past. However, it is clear that we cannot do so about the future. And my colleague, Rog Palmer, who is an aerial archaeologist, once said that someone once told me that I am more concerned about the past neither the present and the future. And it also had a footnote. However, it said it's a personal communication with ex-wife. So, of course, this is the perspective of the ex-wife concerning the past and the future. Of course, at the same time, it's quite irresponsible to predict the future, but at the same time, you also cannot be held responsible because no one knows what future will bring. We all know that the future will be somewhat different, and all the forecasts will be forgotten in time. But in the context of archaeological heritage, of course, it also holds a rather strong element of the present. Of course, people tend to stick with the current status quo, and people are reluctant to change something. So people tend to stick to what they know. Sometimes, of course, it is clear that the reforms are needed, but people only appreciate the reformers afterwards in some time. And of course, when I'm talking about the future, I'm not risking anyway, because of course, forecasts are never precise. At the same time, I think it's my duty to think about the future of the sector that I represent. And if we talk about the archaeological sector and its future in Latvia, of course, I will be sharing my personal views, but I think that the conflict between the human rights, personality, personal property rights will only become stronger. Of course, I could claim that the bureaucratical burden will only increase in future. And here I'm not just talking about the negative connotation of bureaucracy, but also many other aspects related to it. It is clear that striking the balance between the cultural heritage and the legal frameworks of different hierarchies will be of great importance. But the main point is not to lose the heritage itself within the labyrinths of bureaucracy. And also, let me point out that the protection, studying, developing, communication of the heritage is our priority. However, legal specialists, IT specialists, and others are more and more involved in these processes while not taking or assuming any responsibility. And in a way, we must appreciate their contribution, but of course, generally, everyone should keep within his or her own specialty. Also, when it comes to managing our cultural and archaeological heritage. Yes, and as we continue, most of archaeological sites are located in rural areas where it will remain also in following decades. But at the same time, in Latvian rural area, there are some drastic changes. The main challenges are presented by depopulation, the changes in the rural areas, such as foresting, and it is clear that any site could be turned into agricultural land at any moment. So here you can see a picture of the eastern part of Latvia, where you can see just one house. So how do we take care of archaeological heritage in such circumstances? In early 20th century, there were many people in rural areas, and you could always approach someone to ask where are some ancient burial grounds or other archaeological sites, because people simply knew what is what and where these sites are. However, now the times have changed. Rural areas are basically empty, so there is no one you could ask, and those who are there mainly have no knowledge of these archaeological sites. So this is how we actually lose a source of information. Here is another list of problems, namely how to locate these archaeological sites. Now we use the historical addresses of these sites. However, nowadays these addresses are no longer valid. So how do we find a location which, for example, Zundu village, which no longer exists because there are no people living in it? So how can you find the Zunda village cemetery if there is no one you could ask to point you to the right direction? Therefore, there is a need to reform the way we address these locations. So I would say that we should switch to geographical or laser methods of putting these places on maps, such as LIDAR, for example, or other geographical coordination system. Here you can see another archaeological site. You see in what state it is. So not only people are losing the information about where these sites are located, but also the folklore is no longer available, because now it's not the case where grandfather tells his grandson or granddaughter about some legends concerning the area within which they live. So basically, if something is not included in tourism leaflets, it's very difficult to locate the archaeological sites that are closely linked with the folklore. Of course, we as researchers, we are really willing to preserve this folklore, which is an integral part of archaeological heritage. Of course, it will be difficult to translate the Omar Khayyam poem, but the idea is the following. You fool, you think that you are a scientist, you try to find the bridge between the past and the future. However, there is no chance for you. Better sit down under the tree, drink some wine, and simply forget about your powerlessness. So there is also a paradox that although the number of archaeological sites is reducing or are being destroyed, but at the same time, there are new archaeological sites emerging. Nowadays, the number is even growing, but it will not be the case in future, and I'm quite convinced that the number will reduce, which means that we will put more value on the sites that still remain. Of course, the statistical data regarding the sites that we have lost is very scarce. Of course, I have collected some data, and if we compare the data from the early 19th century, we could say that up to 2/3 of archaeological heritage has been lost. And although the statistics is not very precise, I'm convinced that we are losing archaeological sites. And this is not just purely archaeological problem. It's also a question of how old a site should be to be regarded as archaeological monument. According to current law, we are talking about 1700s years. We are basically talking about early 18th century, which is this borderline. But I'm confident that this threshold will increase. In other words, I believe that we will regard sites as archaeological monuments starting from the middle of 19th century, which means that we will be switching more and more to urban environment, to villages, a variety of cultural layers, and artifacts of that time. Here is a picture I would like to show you. And of course, if we raise this threshold, the number of sites will increase. However, whether they should be protected just as the Stone Age settlements, I'm not sure. Another point, in the 19th century and early 20th century, the archaeology focused on artifacts. So that was the main focus. They dig out the artifacts, they compared them, preserved them, traded them. But in a way, the place where they were found only served as a vessel And at that time, actually, there were instructions. You know, you better dig out the old burial grounds in somewhere in the middle. This is where you will find some jewelry or such artifacts. This trend also continued in the early 20th century. However, gradually the site itself and its role gradually increased. So now we are not just talking about the vessel, whether it's a burial ground or a sunken ship, but not only about the contents, but also about the surroundings and the landscape that actually contains the artifacts. So if initially we only focused on the artifacts, now we are looking more and more at the context in which it is found and why it is found and what was its role in the overall context of the location. So this could be one of the turning points that we have already observed. Of course, another trend is to use non-destructive or less intrusive archaeological methods, because archaeological digs, of course, destroy the site. And I'm sure that non-intrusive technologies will help us, but I'm not sure whether they will solve all the issues. I'm confident that also in the future archaeological digging will have a very important role in our sector, because we still don't have any methods that could completely substitute digging. Those who say that technologies allow us to non-intrusively explore the archaeological sites, actually, I think that they are daydreaming. And in conclusion, talking about illegal archaeology, I would say that, of course, this is the dark side of human condition, but this is something that we have observed throughout centuries. Let us look back at the Egypt's pyramids, for example, which were raided. Of course, we continue to penalize those who engage in such illegal activities. However, we should keep in mind that this is something that always will be there. There will be always some manifestations of violence, theft, etc. All that is left is to educate people, but it is clear that we will have to live with that, and this will always be a part of protecting archaeological heritage. And this will always be an issue. So, and here you can see the last slide in Liepupe. Here you can see illegal digs. I think that the private property issues will play an increasing role in future, because I think that the landowners will increasingly take care of these sites. And already now we have certain cases where the very fact that the site is within the territory of a privately owned land is much better protected from illegal digging. So that would be a brief overview from me. Thank you for your attention.
Mēs sagatavojamies nākamajai. Arī nākamā runātāja ir
Also, the next speaker is my colleague in our board of national heritage, and her participation in every meeting makes every meeting into a lesson on history of art. Her example shows us how important it is to take every detail into account, and so we give floor to Ms. Ruta Kaminska. Hello, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I am not going to teach and also will not have any joke, but since I represent field of the history of art, my attitude towards the development of protection of monuments and all heritage is from academic point of view. For many years I have worked with monuments of art, and practical experience shows how vast possibilities we have to research, to examine all these pieces of art. And we also have certain limits which we cannot overcome, but this doesn't mean that in future we will not have any better opportunities. Maybe we cannot even imagine what future will bring to us. To understand the volume of available information that helps to assess a specific art phenomenon from perspective of the academic history of art, I would like to stop at specific example. It is sufficient to look at a highly evaluated piece of art, though in local heritage context. Within the context of recent visit of the Pope to Latvia, we heard a lot about the miraculous icon of Our Lady of Aglona. Its value exceeds the limits of the value of this respective piece of art. It has even higher value for society and also the church. Art historian visually looking at this painting would say that it has been restored on the verge of 17th or 18th century. It features characteristics of Baroque sacral paintings. It characterizes heritage of specific region and also confession. Its artificial context should be looked for in this territorial spectrum. In this case, it is the heritage of Great Duchy of Lithuania and Poland. At the same time, we see also a reference to Byzantine art and composition prototype. But it is not enough to understand the symbolic value of this painting. From the point of view of the church, the brightness of image of miraculous lady is expressed via presence of holiness and its expression here in this painting. And this all has been recorded by authors of the church chroniclers. This painting is perceived as an image, and through years the story has added a layer of legends and stories. And this has to be taken into account by all those working with cultural heritage and also monuments. And we also have to respect the cult status of this painting because it is so important for a large part of society. And so we have to look for practical solutions, and it is not enough with correct academical conclusions. And looking at this from the point of view of monument research and protection, it is important to emphasize several aspects. Thinking about future. First of all, we have to speak about attraction of different scientists from sciences, from nature sciences. Also, we have to have wide cooperation among different fields. And we also have to prepare specialists in this very complicated field, which is called the research on monuments. This painting, which I referred to in Aglona, it is dated with the 15th century, and it is copy of a painting which is located in Lithuania in Trakai Catholic Church, and it is known that this is a present to a Byzantine emperor, from Byzantine emperor to Lithuanian Duke Witold, and one of the legends tell us that this painting during the war in 18th century has been brought to Aglona, and later copy and the original have been switched. And so in Latvia they say it is the original. But through restoration we see that it is a copy. In Aglona version, the painting doesn't have many amendments, and it is rather close to Lithuanian painting. But Lithuanian painters and specialists have been able to tell about Trakai paintings. This has been changed composition and the shape. So the bottom part of the painting had been removed, and here we see this Hodegitria type painting of the Holy Mary. So Saint Mary doesn't have rosaries anymore, and also gestures of the lady and the child has been different. But the oldest part had been covered by several additional layers, and through restoration the painting has the view of 17th century, and this has historical value. And thanks to the work of Lithuanian specialists, also the academic art history texts switch their emphasis and also tell that this Aglona painting is a copy. So we have done a lot to understand this, and very many different scientists have worked with this. We have surveyed the timber, and we have examined the paintings. Chemical analysis have been performed. Also, X-ray have been applied to understand which layer is the oldest one, and right now we understand which is the original version of this painting. And as we all understand, and now we have quite better methods that doesn't hinder the structure of our history of art, and also can discover historical layers. And as we all know, that currently we do not have problem with standalone art because they can be moved, and also equipment can be moved to these pieces of art. But technical possibilities increase year by year, and we hope that also later we will have mobile equipment. We will be able to examine also different wall paintings on spot in the places where they are located. We can also be able to have specialists with in their daily work with all this equipment. And then when we have obtained data, we can interpret, and then we can have better decisions and decide on the preservation methods for these pieces of art. If I should evaluate situation in preservation of pieces of art and monuments, it is clear that we have to cooperate. We have to cooperate and exchange data with different specialists, and this we see also here locally in Latvia when working with Latvian monuments. So we can have different data, but we have also visual examination and theoretical experience how it could be, and then we could have false conclusions. And then we could guess that 19th century wall painting is perceived as 18th century wall painting, or different explanations which do not match with reality. And in this case, which I already mentioned, regarding the painting, we could understand which are the real age of the painting, and we could also see how the understanding and perception has changed through centuries. And this is why we would like to see even better technical equipment for using for research in monument fields. So here we should speak about special cases when we would need, we would apply some sort of emergency assistance, so mobilization of resources, not only on a national level, but also on regional level, when we could share experience and knowledge with specialists and also to find better solutions. And as we know, we can have new technical solutions and methods among narrow range of specialists, but another would be cooperation, and so this could be the best solution for the future. First, we should speak about pieces of art, about restoration, preservation, and then it is not only history of art, but also heritage, our heritage regarding monuments and other pieces of heritage. And already today, restorators cooperate with people working with chemical substances, and also right now we can have one good example. We have an exhibition devoted to oaks in the Baltic states, and as we see that Netherlands paintings have painted a lot on the boards which have been made from oaks which have been growing here in the Baltic states. And also cooperation should be intensified on national measure. We should coordinate this cooperation. We also have to have new technologies, and we could make a national research center. And this is really my dream, but why shouldn't I dream? So this would be a very nice research center. We also have to strengthen and expand cooperation on a national, international level. Of course, we have personal contacts. We have different international forums of art historians. We also meet among restorators in the Baltic states, but they are not coordinated. And I think that coordinated regular contacts could be even better and more intense. As I mentioned, that Lithuanian colleagues helped us to understand the age of our Agluona painting. But this information was necessary also earlier, and it would be nice to have this information before the previous Pope's visit to Latvia in 1993. And I would like also to speak about the specialists working with monuments. So it is clear that we need real specialists, knowledgeable specialists working in the field, and I would like to see extended and coordinated program for teaching such art historians that are specialized in issues of monuments. Maybe this topic and this issue is very important here in Latvia. Maybe in other countries it has been already solved. Right now, every specialist have different possibilities to study abroad, and but this program should be organized also locally, because we have really a wide offer of these monuments, and we have work also here locally. And it is not enough with the professors and students relationship and knowledge which is acquired through practical work together with the mentors. But as I already mentioned, I would like to say that academic history of art and monument research is not one and the same. So, of course, we need academical knowledge. We should be able to interpret practically acquired results, but we need also practical work to understand theoretical conclusions and draw theoretical conclusions. And also, this work requires special attitude. We can discuss different pieces of art, but this requires theoretical structure, theoretical knowledge. At the same time, specialists on monuments have to face different artifacts. They have their fate or destiny, and they also are emotionally perceived differently when they have to preserve. And Also, the painting to which I refer from Agluona Church can be analyzed differently and by applying different technical possibilities. It should be done to preserve this piece of art, and we have to remember that it has its own legends. It has the right to have these legends and stories, and this is not only an object, it is a piece of art with such features which are not always rational for the society, and this is an icon in the church, and its function in the church requires specially delicate attitude from on the part of the specialists. And we, as the art historians, are those who have to be able to balance and to strike balance between these aspects. Of course, during the last decades, we have more and more information, and we will have different types of information also later. And it is also clear that different fields will develop, methods will develop, and we will be able to acquire different data on different monuments. And I really hope that the exchange of information will facilitate cooperation among different specialists in different fields. And all this is in our hands. So I do hope that we will have such specialists. And really, finally, coming back to our painting, right now I would like to hope that its condition after travel outside the altar is satisfactory. Recently I was in Rome, and I looked at the Our Lady of the Snow painting, and also I have to understand how this painting has had its role in Rome, and now she is there. So in our case, the painting was moved through wind and rain, and here we also have to speak about routine work. We have to have a relationship with the owner of the piece of art. We have to tell how to do in the interest of the piece of art to retain and preserve the value of this, not only to have one vision, not only image, but to just to have this piece of art in good shape. Thank you.
Turpinot.
And as we continue about cooperation in the area of cultural heritage, we have invited also a representative of a municipality, because, of course, local governments play a crucial role within the system of the preserving of cultural heritage. Therefore, it is my honor to give floor now to Jānis Rozenbergs, mayor of Cēsis municipality, who has shown very positive attitude towards cooperating with us, and as a result, the city that he is in charge of is increasingly popular among tourists. Hello, everyone. After the previous two speakers, I must say that it seems like my presentation will be perceived rather as an advertisement for the city I represent, since I'm not a specialist. And when a couple of weeks ago, when I visited Mr. Dambis, this was the moment when he convinced me to come and speak in front of you, to share my experience. I would say that the leading municipality in terms of preserving cultural heritage is Kuldīga town. and quite often other municipalities are compared with Kuldīga. So we have our own good examples from which we can learn. My presentation mainly consists of pictures, and of course Latvians are very well aware what is Cēsis, founded in 812th year, and it is one of the oldest towns in Latvia, the third oldest to be precise, and therefore we are quite rich in cultural heritage, and fortunately during both world wars the damage was minimal. But of course, this also means a lot of responsibility and a lot of work we have to do, since actually with time we are increasingly aware of how to deal with these issues. If we go back to 2009, there was this TV program from BBC or CNN, I'm not sure, and they visited our town, and they did not show our town in a very positive light. It seemed like we have been neglecting our valuable heritage. In a way, it was the lowest point from which we have been gradually trying to escape. So we have numerous historical and cultural monuments, but basically the central part of our town is a place which houses a lot of architectural and cultural sites. Let me just briefly provide you with an overview of these sites, because usually when you point your finger at the private sector, they always point the finger back at the municipality. So in a way, there's always someone else to blame for neglecting the heritage. However, we also have several positive examples of how to preserve and develop our heritage, and in a way it creates the effect of a snowball, and also our neighboring municipalities try to improve the situation. So the first and foremost, I should mention the medieval castle, which is one of the largest buildings of that kind in the Baltic states, and we have done a lot in this building. And the restoration works are still ongoing in specific parts of the castle, while also offering this site for tourists. The next site would be the so-called new castle of Cēsis town, which has been renovated in the recent 3 years. From the ground up, because at one point only first 2 floors were used for practical purposes, and the attic was abandoned, therefore it had suffered most of the damage. Here you can see the castle park. It's a really beautiful area, which serves as a venue for a variety of events. Here you can see the concert hall. This has been a society house historically. However, in 2012 to 2014, we reconstructed the building, and here you can see how the old part of the building has been supplemented with a modern annex. And in this particular building, and also the next example I will show you, actually shows how we had to decide whether to tear down the entire building and start anew. However, in both cases, in case of the concert hall and also the library, we decided correctly, namely to renew the historical buildings. And in this case, we managed to retain the historic features of the building. Cesis is a small town with 15,000 inhabitants, so the question always is whether, in case of we build something anew and also keep the historical building, how to maintain them from the financial point of view. Here is another example, the Central Library of Cesis. And Mr. Wilkes, in the grand opening, said that either it's an old wine in a new bottle or vice versa. I'm not sure, but that's basically the essence. It has kept its historic charm, although it has been renovated heavily. And if previously children were reluctant to attend library, now we have special facilities which children quite enjoy. And now if I ask the head of the library what they would change, she said actually that sometimes we have even too many children, so we have overdone this effort to attract more children. In a positive way, of course. And also in the recent years, we have tried each year to renovate at least one street of the old town. And we have also coordinated these plans with the National Heritage Board. So this section of the road was reconstructed during 2 years. Of course, it was quite difficult because we had to block the entrance not only to residential houses but also to businesses. However, somehow the townspeople managed to live with this and now are very happy about the results. And we tried to replicate the essence of the historical layout of this area. So this is how we try to make our town a better place for both for residents and also for businesses and the guests of the town. And at the same time, within our town, we have such buildings which had been abandoned for a couple of decades. But at one point, youngsters from capital city found this place and actually turned it into a very popular cafes. So it also houses an exhibition gallery, small, obviously. So in a way now it has turned into an accommodation for hipsters. And the youth, they also have rather viable plans also for the future. So before the house was demolished, we were happy that the hipsters took it over. And just next to it, historically, this building housed a school. And then it was given to vocational school, which then moved to other premises. So the municipality created a creative industry center. So now it's quite busy with entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes. We have artists who work in this building and send their artwork also abroad. So this is an example of how we can repurpose the building. And you can see that the renovation works are far from perfect, but still it functions, and it gives the area a certain atmosphere or a very special feeling about this building. Of course, we also have private investors who renovate their property. For example, this bookstore called Zvaigzne ABC, and they could also be used as role models on how to renovate their property. Of course, it was quite costly. However, we are happy to have such private entrepreneurs who engage in such activities. And here is an example of a different trend where whenever a private business is involved. So there is always a dilemma how to find the correct balance between the preservation of cultural heritage against the amount of investment it requires. So this property is located near River Gauja, originally built as a villa for Russian aristocrats. And in Soviet times, it was a tuberculosis hospital. And after regaining independence, the building was abandoned. And basically, the whole compound contains 3 buildings, and altogether it cost 6.4 million to put this area in order. So the original idea was to renovate the historical buildings, but then the alternative was considered to basically demolish these rundown buildings and to start anew and replicate the historic buildings. Of course, all of you are the advocates of the historic heritage. However, we as a municipality always have to find some kind of middle ground, because otherwise this building would be doomed. Here we have another case of so-called Vanadzinch house. This house was also demolished down to the foundations, and afterwards, after investing 1 million euros, the house has been rebuilt. And we are quite proud of this building and how it complements our city. Here we have another example, the SEB Bank building. So it's not always very easy for the municipality to find the middle ground between attracting new investment and fostering business and preserving the cultural and historic heritage. Another point I would like to raise is the importance of educational work and awareness-raising campaigns. I would say the general trend currently is quite positive. We no longer have people installing plastic doors or plastic windows on historical buildings. which is the case in the old part of Cēsis town, because people are much more aware of how to treat historic buildings. And as I mentioned before, it always creates this snowball effect. So road models tend to be followed by neighbors, which is a really positive thing. And here you can see how renovated buildings are used for public events, for a variety of seminars. And I think this educational work is very important to raise the awareness among the general population. And it has been proven that art brings a new impulse, and breathes new life into abandoned buildings. Here we can see an old brewery, and it was in 2001 when Cēsis Brewery moved to the new facility. This building was abandoned for around 10 years. And then we held an arts festival. So this old brewery was used as an exhibition hall. So this has been already an established tradition to house exhibits in this brewery. And it is clear that with each year, this building is gradually renovated, and I'm confident that with the years it will turn into a prominent arts center. So here you can see also concerts, a variety of performers that participate in this art festival. And here you can see also this territory is gradually expanding. Now even beyond the original borders of the old brewery. So I would say that such an approach may sometimes work really, really well. Another aspect that I would like to mention, especially with a view towards the future, of course, there are also negative examples, because, of course, property owners are quite different. Some are reckless, some don't care, and there is very little you can do about it, because this is their property, this is their constitutional rights to the property. And on several occasions, we can see these examples of abandoned buildings where probably the solutions could be found together with the National Heritage Board. And I'm confident that we have to improve our legislation for the municipality and also for the Heritage Board to be able to do something about such neglected buildings. Because, of course, I don't have a universal solution to such cases, but I think that if the owner for several years has neglected such a house, we have to have tools at our disposal to deal with such situations. Yes, but generally speaking, we are doing quite well. With each year, we can see our town evolving and becoming more pleasing to the eye. And this is why we attract so many creative people and also tourists. And we are attracting people from capital city to our beautiful rural town. And some economists say that, that Greater Riga region is all that we need. However, the example of our town actually disproves this approach, this rather cynical approach, And it clearly illustrates that also small rural towns have quite a bright future. So we will be happy to continue our good cooperation also in the future. And I look forward to working closely with you all towards building an even better future. Thank you.
Paldies par CESU pieredzi.
Thanks for CESI's experience. It was really interesting. We planned for one more speaker, but sometimes it is so that health is not so good. But this is the reason why we will submit this speech to you in written form. Actually, this was very, very interesting story which we expected to hear, because usually if we speak about spiritual heritage and Christian spirituality, then we can anticipate what we would hear. But Lennart Rosentals is from those people which is very careful in examining different examining different things. He examines spiritual world, and he also has philosophical approach towards preservation of different heritage. He has a vision regarding future, and you will be able to read his speech. And thus, we do not have any other lecturer, any other speaker anymore. So all speakers have been listened to, and we could make a slight amendment to our agenda. So we had planned for coffee break, and then we planned for discussion, and after discussion we planned for cocktail, but we could merge coffee with cocktail and start discussion immediately, if you agree to this. And then cocktail would be together with coffee, and that would be even more tasty. And then we could continue our discussion at the glass of cocktail. And then those who were listening to today's speeches, presentations, most probably you have different ideas. And I would like you to have some ideas, common ideas, conclusions. So to put everything on paper, to have a final document. So we have tried to put something on this already. It is not yet ready. So I really expect you to put your ideas on the paper, but while this document is being drafted and while it is prepared, we could really start our conversation, our discussion. If you have anything to add, anything to recommend, or you have nice ideas, so you are warmly welcome. So here, at this point, at this moment, you are really welcome. I really don't believe that you have no comments, no recommendations, no ideas. If we all agree to documents that this could be, so we could make such a document together. This is not today, not to finalize it here on the spot, but we could have some small working group which would discuss this and put on paper in a qualitative way, so we could put it in nice words. So my proposal, we would reach every speaker, and if there is any correction, then we could make it nice. And so within 1 or 2 weeks, we could prepare this final document. This is really a draft, which you see here on the screen. So it is in Latvian, and so the topic is clear. I really liked the phrase uttered by Christine that we can do more than we are able to imagine. Therefore, I put this under the line there, and it is really like that in life. So the preamble would be very short, that we, participants of the International Conference, Cultural Heritage for Protection for the Future, from the countries represented here, by emphasizing the significance of cultural heritage in preserving European identity, are of opinion. And then it follows. The first, of course, we can also improve this succession of this and also reorganize this. But first would be the notion of the cultural heritage is expanding with time, and it becomes a multidisciplinary phenomenon on international and national level. Cultural heritage, we have to pay more attention to this interdisciplinary dimension. Do we have essential objections? So we mention this, so we do not speak about wording here today. So if nobody is screaming and not jumping on the chair, and next, I think that we have to mention Davos Declaration, which speaks about construction culture, which is new and really successful way of creating such a document, and it is very important that we have this declaration, but we also have next steps regarding this. And so this point would be that the Davos Declaration concept of construction culture is really new and promising, and it will change our understanding about the preservation of European values and will strengthen competitiveness. And we need active further steps to implement this into practice. So is anybody against Davos Declaration? Nice to hear. I do hope that we all have read this document, which speaks about construction culture in Europe, which has originated from our sphere, and this has been adopted in relation to Davos declaration, and this is so elevated on the highest possible level. And this was done at the beginning of this year, and I do hope that we have to follow also the next activities. So the third would be that protection of cultural heritage, work efficiency should have a analysis of best practices, accumulation of this practice and analysis, and also spreading this. So we have to spread this best practice all around. This strengthens and helps to create new examples for best practice. I think that many of our today's speakers mentioned this. Again, no objections. So number 4, the cultural heritage policy should always react to different processes in society, and it should continuously develop. So it is very important to my mind recommendations. So we have different policies and legislative acts, but we do not work on these. And even when circumstances change, we stick to all the facts and acts. So and then we come to conclusions that something has been missed. And I think that this is topical also for politicians, because sometimes they think, yes, we have norms, we have system, we have laws, just work now. But system should develop. Is anybody against changes? None. Number 5, when renewing cultural heritage, we need specific attitude from construction industry and also respecting these values and safeguarding attitudes. So we have noticed that big companies think only about profit, but culture, heritage, specificity is left behind. And as we also heard today, sometimes it is so that big companies, they receive procurement, they win this and then the small companies are their subcontractors, and the quality is not the best. Of course, we can try to improve the wording to understand this better. Any objections? No. Number 6. Renewal of cultural heritage is performed through competition with each other, so with lobby of profitable sectors for spreading funds or resources. So this is not very nice to understand, but we all know, we are all aware of this. We can remind that we have to compete and be competitive. But I think it is very good that we are aware of this, we pay attention to this, because here we do not provide specific solutions. Any objections? In principle, no. Number 7, that under globalization circumstances, European cultural heritage has met influence of different multi-sided civilizations outside Europe, and so we have to be tolerant towards them. We have to develop mutual European cultural heritage. I think this is really very important. Not so much for us, but in Europe in general. Jānis Lēnieks also said that we also will see here in our country. Should we always be tolerant, is the question. We can be tolerant, but the question is how far can we be tolerant towards this? So, 2 possibilities: being tolerant, not being tolerant. Tolerant in the brackets. The notion of tolerance doesn't mean that so we have dogmatic approach or attitude towards this. Okay. This we could so we could improve wording later. So, but just the idea is okay. Okay, number 8. So the main documents for cultural heritage protection, different charters, declarations are stable. So we also have to start with conventions, I guess, are quite stable cornerstones of the sector, but it is not topical to improve these documents. Professionals should work with development of principles for safeguarding and preserving cultural heritage, which are closer for people and better understandable. And we also have to popularize these methods and develop. So we have to address society, and then awareness will improve regarding these monuments and cultural heritage. I would so principles are common, they are similar, the principles cannot be easier or more difficult to understandable. So principles should be strict, or explanation of principles. Yes, maybe, so it is explanation of principles, which is more and easier understandable for people. So we have noticed this. We have noticed this need, and we will correct wording of this.
General criteria. When you were speaking about principles, I asked a question. For instance, the idea of NARA, of authenticity, you consider a principle, a criteria? Criteria, yeah. Because I need that there is not a clear list of criteria that should be taken in front of us as commands that should be always in the politic of heritage, in the restoration everywhere. We prefer authenticity than to build a new building, as the mayor said. Sometimes you cannot, but we need to fight for authenticity. This is criteria, for instance. Try to avoid the change of use of many buildings, like churches, to find uses that could be similar, in order to keep the personality of buildings. Because for me, one of the problems of restoration of architecture overall is that we, at the end, we look at the buildings like history of art, like a material thing. But each building has his history, his personality. And we need to increase the interest about personality, the history of the building, what was the soul of the building. Each building had a soul. Many times when we destroy many things, when we build it without, for instance, we have a house. The house has bed, has many things. Now we use the house of a culture municipality, for the house of culture of the municipality. But we keep the building, but the soul has been lost. Because before it was a house with beds, with portraits, with cupboards, many things, and with all the furniture of a house. If we change the use of a house and we transform it in a house for culture or a cinema, really we keep the building, but we don't keep the soul of the building. So we need to try to, in certain way, perhaps if we had not changed the building, to, in certain way, in some place, to remind that this has been a house. It's the same with the churches. We transform a church in a hotel. We need to remember that there is a history of the building that was there, why this building has been built. And I believe that in this moment, all the publicity of the buildings, and we take the history of the buildings, and the tourism, when the people go there, many times they don't know what was the use of these buildings, why this building has been built. So we need to recover this because this is the spirit and the soul of Europe and the soul of the buildings. These are old habits. In certain way, now we think of architecture of a history of buildings, not about history of Europe or culture. I don't know if I have been sufficiently clear. To add something about this.
Jā. Paldies par komentāru. Jā.
Thank you for your comment. Jans Lennox also has a comment.
Soul of the building. We have speak. Yeah. But about the soul, if the building has been demolished and built as a copy, the copy as well has a soul.
The copy is not a heritage. A copy is a copy. Heritage is original. We can, for reasons of the image of the city, to reveal the new. But the building is not heritage. If we make a copy of a Velázquez, the new Velázquez is not a Velázquez, it's a copy of Velázquez. And we can use it very good for the museums, for the teaching, but it's not a piece of art. It's a copy.
But if the building has some meaning.
Then we can repeat the building because we want to reconstruct the image of the street. I understand. And I'm in favor that sometimes we need to repeat this. Even this is very interesting, excuse me that I discuss this. I am working a lot with what we do with the cities after the earthquake. After the earthquakes, like happened after the war in Poland, people wanted to rebuild the city as it was.
Center of Warsaw, yes.
I like this, like Dresden. I believe that the people, they want to rebuild the city as it was. They are on the right and perfect because all the studies about the earthquakes recently say that, as the Italians say, the people want to build come era e dove era. That means like it was in the same place. And we need to work in the future about this idea because half of the Athens, that for the Carta Athens everything will be new. No. There is a history of the places that people can repeat if they want. But we need to be clear that they are not authentic. It's a repetition. It's good. How can we say, classify authentic cities that have been rebuilt? Okay, it's good. But it's not the same city.
But the question, the old Rynek in Warsaw, it has no soul.
No, it has this soul. It has soul, but it's a question that we repeat the history. Well, perhaps the word is too how to say, very heavy, the word soul. But an original church, Romanic church, is different than the new Romanic church repetition. So, in many ways, perhaps I am speaking more about religious architecture. Religious architecture has something special because it was a place for the relation between the man and the God. It was a special place. And it has some spirit there that we need to try to transfer to the people that now they go to visit them. That's why the people go to the church and they need to think that even if now is not a church, if everything is there, they understand how important was this building for the spirit of the people in those times. So each building has his history, his spirit, and we need to try to transfer to the others.
Of course, a church can't lose the soul, otherwise it's a hotel, doesn't matter, it's hotel or another function.
Yes.
It's a soul, it's inherited
inside. But at the same time, each spirit has its own, when perhaps my idea of soul is not different, it's not, it's something that is some personality, some authentic personality. I don't, in this moment the word is not, perhaps we need to change it. But I believe that you understand what I say. Okay.
Paldies par diskusiju.
Thank you for the discussion. We will try to take this into account. Because the problem, we have noted this. And when you will receive the draft document, and we will also be ready to improve the wording, then you could also add your comments.
Yes, I think this discussion, of course, is based on very grounded merits, so we will deal with this in this our final document.
For many years we have behind us, those that we want to keep the cities alive, and that we try to keep the houses as they were, and the thing in certain way, we have always the Church of Athens behind us. Like, no, we need to be brave and to say, finish with the church that Athens is there, but we can have the right to say we want to keep history, even if we change things. For me, we need to, in high voice, say we like Warsaw restoration, we like Dresden restoration, and we want, and we find that it's good to rebuild the cities they were when we have a catastrophe. Because the things that are happening, for instance, in Aquila, that they have a meeting of architects saying that they need to rebuild all the city with new ideas, it's something that we can die with this idea. So we cannot accept it. So again, this trend that everything could be new, we need to be strong sufficient to say no. Heritage is heritage, and it has its own rules, and he has his dignity, and his history, and his own criteria. Excuse me.
Jā. Paldies. Es domāju, ka
Thank you. Thank you very much for your input. So, number 9. The legal acts that govern the protection of cultural heritage are not carved in stone. They are based on the experiences of the yesterday, and the responsible institution must be creative in applying them, taking into account the change in paradigm. Because this has been the case in Latvia in many cases where the laws are interpreted rather from the point of view of the wording rather than the spirit of the law. But of course, we have to look into the spirit of the law, because sometimes they may be even conflict with each other. I mean, the wording and the spirit or intent of the law. I would say that probably we should substitute the word paradigm, because here we are probably not talking about the paradigm. Yes, I agree that we probably should replace the word paradigm here. Yes, we will find a synonym more fitting. And number 10, high quality preserving of cultural heritage is impossible without academic knowledge, wide or broad knowledge, and vast experience. And of course, this had been proven by the speech of Ruta Kaminska in the afternoon. So, is anyone among you against knowledge?
Time I say that I know in many rural areas, people who had been the habit to live in rural areas, many time the people, all people, they restored perfectly because they knew the use of the buildings and the technology. So we have some kind of architecture overall of rural areas that many times the best ones are the old people that know how they had been built, and they restore them perfectly. So we need also to quote that there is all skills that need to be recovered and to be considered, because sometimes they have all the technology and how a building should be done. I remember in this moment some restorations that had been made in Cuenca that are marvelous, because they are the same traditions as they were. So perhaps we can, you see this in Santander the same, in the rural areas. So perhaps we can add something or make not so category this idea.
Jā, mēs varam pievienot klāt arī.
Yes, I think we could add also the practices, so that we are not only talking about academic knowledge, but also practical skills and craftsmanship.
Nobody can be against knowledge, of course. That would be a ridiculous statement. But there's a danger in this because heritage is not for the professionals. By putting statements like that, you can make it exclusive. It's not our heritage. I mean, and we know about this heritage. Let the people in. For instance, when we do archaeological excavations, sometimes the professionals don't find it all that interesting because they've found so many of these Roman remains already, or these Viking settlements, and they're not academically interested anymore. But local people are interested because it's their heritage. So yes, knowledge is important, and academic knowledge is important, craftsmanship is important, but be aware that let the people in. Don't exclude the people by saying, I know.
Yes, I agree, I quite agree. I think together with knowledge, with academic knowledge, with skills, etc., for me it's important to take into account the know-how. Sometimes the know-how belongs to people that are living in a rural area for years and years. And they know they are not able to make the project, they are not able to be responsible, but they also know. For example, in one of the rehabilitations we made in our program in Santander, I remember there was only 12 people living in a village, very important from the landscape, from the architecture, from a Roman church, and they were there. When the team of architects, of academic specialists, decided to put something for water, they said it is not enough when water falls. You will not receive the water with this kind of tuyau. And then 2 weeks after, or 3 weeks, it was raining. In fact, water was absolutely out because they have had this problem for years and years, for generations. I agree with you that it is not possible to forget the academic knowledge, not the skills, but a word taking also into account the know-how that some people have in a concrete place. Thank you.
Jā, es domāju, tanī savā runā.
Actually, in my address, I emphasized that there will be 2 dimensions to the heritage. One of them would be the heritage protected by the society itself, where everyone is welcome and everyone can contribute. But the narrow dimension would be this scientifically based academic approach using the most state-of-the-art methods, restoration, research, etc. And I believe that these 2 dimensions always have to complement each other and coexist. And in this point number 10, what I mean is that the sector of heritage cannot exist without academic knowledge, without academic research. But if we talk about specific buildings, specific sites, specific monuments, then of course we sometimes can only rely on this specific local knowledge, the know-how, which would allow these academics to actually do their work properly.
It can't never replace academic knowledge and skills, never. But the know-how can be a complement to take into account.
Tātad mēs mēģinām piepulcināt klāt visu to papildināt, lai nebūtu.
Yes, I get your point. So we are not talking just about academic research and knowledge, but we are talking about the actually interaction between the know-how, local knowledge, and the academic approach. Do we have anything to add to these 10 points? So if you have some immediate ideas regarding probably a topic that we have discussed but have not included. Hello, my name is Baltiņa and I'm from the National Library. Another topic that probably should be included is the cultural heritage experts. Who are these people? I think that this is something that we also should include, because we are not just talking about art historians, architects, but also archivists, intangible heritage specialists, etc. So probably also this range of professions and expertise should also be included in this final document, so that it would also reflect the idea that we are talking about interdisciplinary approach. That could be item 1. Yes, let me react to that. So, as I mentioned in item number 1, I was already talking about this interdisciplinarity of cultural heritage. So we are talking about several sectors, and we are not just talking about architects, archaeologists, or historians. And if we wanted to list all the specialists, all kinds of experts, then we would have to make a couple of pages of these specialists. However, this is the final document, which is a summary. Yes, but we are talking about the future, and I think that it is very important to include specialists who are not only academics, but also other specialists. And also talking about the first point and interdisciplinarity, quite often this could also be understood as different types of heritage. And we also in the break discussed whether this interdisciplinarity could be applied to the experts or different areas of heritage or otherwise. So there are different layers to this term interdisciplinarity. And when we talk about protection of heritage in future, we probably should include all of them. And because already in item number 2, we are talking about culture, and in a way it contradicts the first item because it only talks about culture. So I would say that there is a need to actually work on this interdisciplinarity principle. We will take into account your commentary and try to find an appropriate solution, and probably to expand the meaning of interdisciplinarity. But what concerns the second item, of course, the notion of construction culture or building culture also is quite broad. However, yes, but moving on, do we have anything else to add? Yes, let me just add that most of the speakers said that there is a trend, a global trend, in the area of cultural heritage, is the human right-based approach. And here we are talking about the local communities, and in other words, they may express their human rights through the cultural heritage. So, in a way, it has been already included, but probably we should put it more precisely in this final document to talk about this human right approach. Do we have anything else to add? Of course, we cannot even hope to get to the final version of the document, otherwise we will have to skip the cocktail part. However, my colleagues are putting down all your proposals and remarks, so we will be working on this document behind the scenes, and you will have the chance to also provide your comments before we adopt the final version. So, do we have anything else to add? So, we will set up a small working group to finalize and also integrate the comments from the audience in this document. And afterwards, this document will be sent out to all the speakers and participants of the event for your approval on additional comments. And then the final product will be made available to all of you. So, I would say that thank you very much for contributing to this document. We may consider it as an approved draft to be further improved. And at this point, I would like to announce that the agenda of today's conference has been exhausted. Thank you all for active participation. Thanks for finding the opportunity to participate. I would like to thank all those who presented, all those who organized. Also, thanks to interpreters for trying to deal with our myriads of words. So, thank you very much.